Local news stations had their hands full reporting on this massive debacle. A local hippopotamus escaped from its enclosure and was on a true rampage throughout the city. It damaged cars, scared the living daylight out of civilians. That was until this man found out why and stepped into the street. But before we start our story, smash the like button, make sure to subscribe and hit the notifications bell so you won't miss any new stories. The morning when all this commotion started seemed quite normal at first. Visitors were buzzing as they walked around the local city zoo. It was right during feeding time, so almost all animals were out and about, which was exciting. But then, a large-scale commotion was heard near the west gate. Visitors came flocking in and tried to get a peek at what was going on at the hippo enclosure. But pretty soon, interest switched toward panic when one of the animals inside became dangerously restless. Loud roars were heard, and some people had already started running in the other direction out of panic. It became clear that this animal was trying to escape its enclosure. Zookeepers tried to tap the animal's nose, which normally made it flinch enough to step back. But after a few more attempts, the hippo fully escaped its confinement. The 5,000-pound hippopotamus was now fully walking on the zoo's concrete pavement. It shared its space with the frightened guests as they tried to run away from him. Their fear was justified because the moment this hippo reached public grounds, it started demolishing stuff. It was a scary scene to behold. It was clear that the animal was angry and frustrated because the first visitor's bench it saw pulled right out of the ground by slamming its heavy body against it. Nobody understood why the animal acted this way, but it wouldn't be long before they all found out. As more guests left the danger-filled zoo, so did the hippo, who tried to do the same. The animal was faster than expected, running toward the closest exit as if it knew where to go. Zookeepers tried to block its path, but did not prevail. It was just 15 minutes after the animal's initial outburst in its enclosure. But the large and dangerous hippo was already outside the zoo and walked across public streets. And there, the rampage truly got even more serious. The consequences of the animal's escape would be massive. So what now? It didn't take long for the consequences of the animal's escape to occur. And it started with a full-scale halt of the city's traffic. The hippo went on to occupy a busy intersection in the heart of the city, causing cars to stop in their tracks and even get slammed by the large animal. People simply left their cars and started running. Other cars crashed into one another out of the sheer panic of their drivers. This was getting out of hand quickly. Within half an hour, the entire city was in uproar, and something needed to happen quickly for the sake of the people and the hippo. There was only one problem. The zookeeper called the animal rescue team from outside the city the moment the hippo left his zoo. But by the time the team assembled their gear and got onto the road, the entire city was already blocked off. There was no way they could come closer. Traffic jams went on for miles with no movement. The team of 6 even put on their siren and asked drivers to move, but with no result. Some of the cars didn't even have drivers in them anymore. And the team was still at least 20 minutes away by car, so help was far removed. With the camera rolling, the news reporters brought live footage of the shocking scene. To get the best scoop, they even brought their own lives in danger for a better view. The animal roared, and with it, he warned the media crew to stay back. He even slammed a car to prove his point. The images were scary and sad at the same time. And they were all aired at the same time on their respective TV towers. This allowed civilians at home to witness the breaking news happening downtown live. And it was a good thing too, because it led to the following. When all these things were happening downtown, somewhere else in the city, an older man turned on his TV. To most people, this guy was just your average Joe. He had gray hair and a crook in his step while walking. But it would turn out that this man was far from normal. The news broadcaster present declared that the rescue team, who were meant to handle the situation, was unable to arrive at the scene. She stated that nobody knew how this would end. And as she said those words, the camera zoomed in on the large, blubbery mammal. And then this happened. Carl got out of his chair and outed a flurry of emotions. He was shocked that this hippo had escaped from the zoo and caused this much mayhem, but he was mostly angry that things could come this far. Damn it, this was just a matter of time. Carl paced, mumbling through his living room. Carl knew what he had to do. The old man ran out of his living room and changed out his Sunday slippers for rugged, weather-resisting boots before leaving his house on a mission. Getting the car downtown was not an option. It would only let him get stuck, just like the rescue team. That's why Carl opted for a smaller vessel. While the entire city had come to a standstill, one man raced past them all. Carl zigzagged through stationary cars on his moped and tried not to crash into one on his way to that dreaded intersection. But what was he going to do there? Removing it was a kind term for something far more gruesome. Carl knew that removing it meant, by any means, necessary. Most likely, that would result in the end of the Hippo's life. Carl wanted to prevent this from happening. He shifted into higher gear and raced like the wind. Tears were forming in Carl's eyes, not from the wind flowing into his face, but from the thought of this poor, innocent animal suffering if he did not hurry. After 10 minutes, Carl reached the intersection. People saw the old man park his moped and step onto the street. Everyone looked on in fear. The giant hippo had just broken off a fire hydrant, and large volumes of water spilled into the street, making the scene even more dramatic. Media was still filming, but the roars of the hippo had driven them to film from further away. So the only two mammals now present were the hippo and Carl. Fear was palpable in these city streets, but it appeared that Carl's face did not express that fear. He didn't seem scared at all and calmly walked through the intersection toward the rampaging animal. The confrontation quickly turned into a stalemate, and both parties stared deeply into each other's eyes. Eventually, Carl stretched out his arm as if he wanted to pat the giant hippo. Everyone around the old man screamed for him to step back and run away, and even the hippo made it seem like this was a good plan. The large animal stomped its feet and roared multiple times, fueling the fire. But all that commotion did not penetrate Carl's calm mind. His demeanor remained unchanged, and he kept walking closer and closer to the animal, without saying a single word. The crowd around the intersection held their breath as they watched how this failed old man stood only a foot from the animal. Carl's hand was still stretched out, so with the distance shortened, he was able to touch the large hippo. The old man placed his right hand on the animal's head, and then something extraordinary happened. The aggressive and confused hippo turned into a calm animal almost instantly. It was unbelievable. All the civilians watching stood in awe, whispering in disbelief. But Carl wasn't done yet. There was one more thing he had to do. From his pocket, he carefully pulled out a tranquilizing dart, typically fired from a rifle. He gently inserted it into the animal's neck. The hippo roared briefly in surprise, then slowly collapsed into a deep sleep. As the media rushed in, Carl waved them off, urging everyone to keep their distance. Soon after, the zoo owner, some staff, and armed police arrived. Then, Carl revealed his identity. He was a retired zookeeper who had cared for the hippo, named Bill. They had shared a close bond. Seeing Bill like this devastated him. Carl went on to explain that the zoo had deteriorated over the years, especially under the management of the new owner. Enclosures were reduced in size, staff was cut in half, and the animals were suffering. Carl had submitted petitions and voiced his concerns repeatedly, but no one in the local government had paid attention until now. Turning to the cameras, Carl addressed the city. He spoke passionately about the poor conditions and the neglect Bill and other animals had faced. Using the sleeping hippo as evidence, he demanded accountability. His speech was broadcast live across the city. Millions saw it unfold from their homes. This time, even the government couldn't ignore it. An escaped hippo and Carl's powerful words left no room for denial. Soon after, Bill was transported to a peaceful sanctuary outside the city with far better conditions. Surrounded by other hippos, Bill quickly adapted and thrived, so much so that the sanctuary decided to keep him permanently. The impact didn't stop there. Carl's actions sparked a full investigation into the zoo. Inspectors found the conditions exactly as Carl described: mismanagement and neglect. The zoo owner's contract was terminated on the spot, something rarely done but entirely justified. A new manager took over. More staff were hired, enclosures expanded, and proper training was implemented. Though fewer animals could be housed due to the larger habitats, the sanctuary where Bill now lived offered to take in the extras. The animals' happiness became visible proof of the zoo's transformation. When the renovations were complete, Carl officially retired again, this time at peace. It's unfortunate that Bill had to go on a rampage to force this change. But the outcome is wonderful, he said. About a year later, Carl was invited back to the sanctuary. Bill was not only healthy and content, but he had also started a family. When Carl arrived, he saw a young hippo calf playing in the water, and tears filled his eyes. Bill had become a father, and for the first time in a long while, everything felt right again.